bikes. XL250s. Where's the other one? So we're making one good one out of two. So we'll do a resto.
Hopefully.
Oh, we can do that. That's not hard. So here's one of them. This was a dunger from a guy from a wrecker. But it's all complete, which is cool. I think there's a box of bits and lights and all that sort of stuff we can stick on as well. So it's road registerable. Cool. There's the little G down there. And here's our other bike. This apparently has got a good engine. But we do have to pull bits of it apart. It's got a stud or a bolt that's broken in the engine into the crankcase. That needs to be done. But it's going to be good. No, it's all good. So this is the deal. I fix these while he fixes that blue car. And that's pretty good. So as mentioned, this one is, they're both XL250s. One is an 81, one's an 82. I think this one here is an 82. This one over here is an 81. And I've been looking online at bits that are available for them, and they're actually pretty good in terms of availability. This one's got a bent up brake pedal and foot peg. And of course the bits on the other one are in much better condition. What else is there? This one, as I mentioned before, I've got to take the top off the engine. We've got a broken bolt going down into the crankcase. So we do have to take the top end off. I think it's a good idea to put rings in it while we've got that off. I'm hoping that the timing chains are all right and they're not too stretched. Wiring and so forth, it's all a bit of a mess. This was bought from a fella from the Eastern Motorcycle Wreckers. Now, I knew them quite well as a youngster because I used to haunt that place looking for bits for XR75s and CB350s and all sorts of stuff. And the mechanic there was a guy called Paul Horner, and he moved, the Eastern Motorcycle Wreckers moved from its position up near Hungary Jackson Ringwood to behind where Peter Stevens was, and he ran a shop there, and of course I went to see him when I bought the 750 about a fuel tank, and of course he'd left. I think he's still got the shop, but he doesn't do any business out of it. We had a year 10 girl actually when I started at the college, Simone, who did a work experience there, and apparently Paul had bought he was still there and he'd bought the business. So a very, very knowledgeable guy. I'd kind of like to speak to him. This one here is all complete. It's got, I think the Kickstarter's all sacked out, so bits and pieces like that. Now, David hasn't heard this run. He doesn't know if it goes or not. This one he rode when he got it. So he knows the engine's in good nick and it runs quite well. Both of them have good fuel tanks. This one on this bike here smells like fuel in there, which is a good thing. It's not varnishy yet. So I'm tipping this will run. It's got a lot of sins on the wiring, but that's easy to fix. It's not hard at all. And this sort of other stuff that we can look at. Of course, Dave wants to keep the bike looking factory, so we'll do a factory resto on one of the bikes. The other one I'm hoping that engine's good because I can make a sort of a yard beater for him, a sort of a thrash around bike. We'll just see, maybe something more an XR than an XL, I don't know. We'll just see what happens. I'm in no hurry for this. So there's lots of good stuff here. It's just a bit of a mess the way it's presented at the moment. Also in the bounty was this box full of bits and pieces. I just want to talk about some of them now. Now what was disconcerting with this is the fact that somebody's done a really, really crummy job painting stuff. And I'm looking at this stuff here, and I'll tell you now, that is not automotive grade paint. That's hobby shop enamel, or just your normal Terps wash up enamel stuff. Now, that sticks to plastic, and I painted the downpipes in my old house with it. It's peeling a bit there. Exhaust headers are absolutely gone. We can't use that. I'm interested in this because it has got that stone shield there, and for a factory look, we need to put that back. Right, what do we got over here? Moving on, switchgear looks pretty good. It feels positive. There's our kill switch. Lights, Parkers and high beam. All looks good, although I can't stand crimp terminals like that. It's all been fiddled with. We need to sort of make sure that it's going to get a good result out of it. Same thing, combi switch there with the horn and everything. That's good. Factory plugs. Indicators look fairly good. We can revitalise these lenses really easy. It's a nice easy gig to do that. Coil packs there. This loom here, this was added to bike it round. What have we got? We'll have a rectifier there, there'll be, that's your coil, flush a can by the look of it. I don't like seeing this sort of stuff. This has been cut. But half of these things are probably jammed in the wrong holes, and we'll just see what. I mean, that's not even something I'd bother keeping. You just chuck that. It feels a bit like a broken timing belt on a car. They sort of turn over in a certain way. Sounds bad. Reasonably bad. Nice and clean inside though. So I'll just plonk that back. It's missing its adjuster there. You can see it's got a valve adjuster on this exhaust valve, but that one hasn't got one. So straight off the bat, it's not brilliant. So although this looks pretty rubbish, this bike, there's a lot of really good kit on it. Far better than the one that had a little brush painting work on it. Oh. I don't know why I'm taking it off. I suppose I've got to take this off anyway, but say the engine I don't need to, but just provides a little bit more room. Right, so I got this thing ready to come out. I've got all the mounts off, the one up on the head. I've just stuck a block of wood there in case it falls down. It's sitting on a milk crate. So the only one left now is this little guy here. So I'm expecting to sort of drop when I crack that. There's just a threaded rod through there with, it's got a nylock on it plus a split washer, which is an unusual thing to do. It's also got these spacers, so while I hold the bike up, it's been put off. So that doesn't look very factory Honda. But we don't worry about that. Okay, there's a little spacer. I think we got it. Oh, it's light, it doesn't really weigh anything. Cool. Let's try and figure out what's wrong with this thing. I'm curious. It's got a white bolt there. I don't know what that is. Some valve spring sitting over here, and the retainer was just sitting on top. So the locks are still there, but they've been sort of smashed in the top. They've been damaged. Now the reason for that is because of the rocker arm that's missing the adjuster in that side. It sort of goes like that, if you see what I mean. And so it's not been pushing in the center of the valve where it's supposed to be. Although these look awfully, they look virtually flush as well. I wonder if that's kosher. We need to sort of take the head off and have a look. Timing chain is exceedingly slack. I can almost unwind that. Need to have a look at the adjuster to see if it's the chain or if it's the adjuster out. It's got an aftermarket bolt sitting in the side. Here we go. Well, what is going on with you, little fella? More importantly, what the hell are those? Oh my gosh, there's two nuts missing. Someone said this out before. That valve will be knackered. You can see it's been smacking around the piston just there. So right for a valve, but I don't reckon that's a big deal. I'm more worried about this. And if it needs replacing, yeah, there we go. And I tell you what, that looks bloody good in there. Hang on a second. What about the rings? None of them are stuck in, they're all freezer bird. That's actually great news. Oh my gosh. Hang on, let's have a look at this. Let me take a look. Should use a manual, but I didn't. Let's take that out. Let's take this little guy here out. I'm too lazy to get an extension. Piss this tensioner off. Governor thing there too, look at that. Let me just get rid of this. Right, that might be, it's got a sleeve and it might be reusable. That'll press on the outside there, so let's just pull these. Let's just pull the whole friggin' thing off, eh? Timing chain straight out. That is so cool. Let's just ignore the fact that I'm working in slovenly conditions. Well, I was going to start the voiceover from the beginning, but I figured there was some information in there which I'd leave. So here we go. We're still pulling the engine apart. These two bikes, there ended up being a third one as well, which we used for parts, and they were all trashed. The one we hoped had a good engine, it just wasn't healthy enough to use, and of course, the more we dug, the more stuff we found. The donor bike, which was this one here, had a lot of was untouched basically. It was all worn out. It was completely flogged out, the whole thing. But there were a lot of bits and pieces on it which were really, really useful, and I ended up using the wiring loom out of it, a lot of the other parts as well, because just for the fact it wasn't cut up and crimp terminals put all over the place which were ill-fitting and that sort of stuff. It was sort of untouched, even though it was worn out. It was a far more useful item than the other bike we started with. More electrical stuff. This is the battery box, and this one looked terrible, but I ended up using this. There was a lot of bits and pieces on the other bike, the first one, which had been cut up, as we said before. Most of the paint that had been put on was just like house enamel. There was no preparation. It was full of brush marks and all this sort of stuff. So it ended up being far easier sort of washing and cleaning and all that sort of stuff, all this sort of kit, than it was trying to resurrect the other stuff. Most of these sorts of bits and pieces, aside from the battery there, most of these bits and pieces ended up going to the powder coater anyway, but the actual quality of the cores were better, if you know what I mean. Bloody hell. The 750 was like, this is really, really hard to get it out. I feel it come out with my leg. Oh. Yep, it came out alright. Dave was keen to keep this taillight. It's a cool little light here. So we'll take that off. It's got like a rubber boot. So we'll take that framework out. I might get that done as well. And I'll punch out these roller bearing erasers. And then this can go off for media blasting and powder coating. As far as the engine's concerned, I'm just going to take this little guy off here and see how that balance shaft is, this little guy under here, see how that's all timed, because that's going to be imperative to get that right or we'll shake our teeth out. Not really sure what Dave's going to want to do with that. There's a gear that's chipped in it obviously, which is this, the tooth. I can't see under or through anywhere where it's come from. I'm tipping it's one of the counter shaft teeth that's broken. Generally new old stock gears for these range anywhere between $50 and $100. So fixing up the bash plate, there was a little tab that was broken off it. The motor in the previous segment you just saw, we didn't end up using that, we used the other one. It was in better visual condition. This is Delrin acetal, if you like, and I made chain tensioners and all sorts of business out of that. We ended up not being able to use one of them, in matter of fact, because it failed with the tyre. Dave had a sort of a wider knobby stuck on the back, and so we couldn't end up using that. But this stuff's great. You can turn in a lathe, you can do all sorts of stuff with it. It's very, very dense sort of plastic. I think we ended up using that bit. There was another bit I made that we couldn't use. But it turned out well, all the same. How beautiful this work is. Now, this is Tech Code in Bayswater. A fella called Sam. Now, when you see these sorts of people, and the same with the blasters as well, if they're enthusiastic about their work, they come out with absolutely perfect results. They don't do it by the numbers, they actually take a lot of pride in what they do. Bash plate, this was the one we welded up, of course. Even these sub-assemblies like foot pegs. We'll put the new blingy, what it's called, clevis pin and spring in. I think it goes that way. Hang on a sec. Let's move that around a bit. And yeah, that goes in there, and of course there's your foot pegs. With all the fittings on, they're going to look absolutely mad, so that's good. Just bits and pieces, motor mounts there. Can we see that? Yeah, we can. Bits of frame. I screwed up though. Here's the kickstand, and of course it's got a little mark there. It's sort of got a hole in it. That's the kickstand for the 750. I had my swing arm done at the same time, and of course the swing arm for this bike, which is mint. So really happy with that stuff. Can't reassemble anything yet because all the fasteners are off getting plated. So probably going to be about a week or so before we see those. And once they're back, I've got the headstock bearings on order, and I've got the engine gaskets on order and rear shock absorbers. More bits and pieces on the wiring. Ended up using bits from both looms, and just took the best of what there was. There was switch gear that had been sort of cut at the bottom. I rejected those ones and used the ones with the original plugs to keep the bike sort of original, and just sort of cleaned out and reconditioned the switch gear itself. This is JCar, what do you call it? Contact lube. It's a solvent-based thing. It sort of cleans and lubricates electrical stuff at the same time. It's really, really good stuff. Of course, powered the loom just off the positive terminal of a car battery and just ran around it with a multimeter and a test light to make sure everything was good. You can see it there. And also it gave me a chance to kind of understand the wiring. It's only very basic, but there are 3 power uptakes on this thing, and there's also, or one of those I should say, is an AC feed from the generator itself, which powers the headlight just when the bike's running. So to sort through this, is going to be a bit of a mess. Cable stays, that'll be a crankcase bolt, that's the hub, the spoke mount on the hub. My 750 rear brake lever. So it's a matter of going through all this. Clutch actuator. Pillion passengers, nice newly plated clever spin and spring. All of the electroplating on this was heat treated to give it some longevity, and it's just a matter of figuring out, and sometimes you have to do it against the frame. Which way does that go? The other thing is the chain tension. I couldn't remember how this went back together. Of course, here it is here with the block out of the acetyl that we made. Of course, that's got a brass sleeve in it which needs to lubricate. So we will stick a little bit of slip around there. We don't want too much. Grease does have a way of attracting dirt and making it stick to it. But what do? We just avoid using too much. Stick that in there and it's good to go. But that looks mint. So it'll sit on like that, flick out, start him up, and then go back again. That's much better. If we compare that to the old one here, that's off the donor bike, and it's all sloppy and floppy and horrible. I think that's down as far as it's going to go. It looks ugly sitting up like that. It's going to see when it's got the seal on it. I don't know if I like that. So just sticking some of these nice bright blingy bits on the frame. That brake pedal ended up removing again and straightening. It didn't look too good there, but one of the main things is when you get all your plating back is sorting through it and figuring out what bits go where, because you can't itemise them when they get plated. You have to stick them all in one bucket. Got the rear shocks, ran a 8 by 1.25 tap through the frame just to clean out where all the powder coating debris was. That can just sit there for now. It's out of harm's way, and I'll probably have to move those slots there elongated so it can move fore and aft a little bit, and that looks bloody good, so I'm happy with that. I think it does, but that's not quite there yet. I feel like I need to get a pick in there and just pull that rubber apart. And most of these are off the 750, but I think that one will do for the ventilator underneath, which is there. So here's the other crankcase, the one off the motor that was supposed to be good, off the bike that was supposed to be a good runner, I should say. Ended up using this, should have split the cases because it ended up having problems, and you'll hear it when it runs later, it has a knock in it. But first off, we just pulled it apart, cleaned everything up, and repainted it, and I was never happy with the paint because it was sort of chipping around where the fasteners went around the perimeter there of the cases. Eventually ended up taking it off, getting it all hydroblast, and hydroblasting sort of peens the metal and gets rid of all those nasty scratches. Only leaves the major ones which you can sort of work on and manipulate, but ended up looking better second time round. Let's give it a bit of an edge over all the bare metal there is, which is most of the engine. There's sort of bits and pieces here and there, particularly on the alloy cases. But the covers aren't very good, so I'm going to redo the covers, but I can do them off the engine, if you know what I mean. They're essentially there as masking. Things like this. I think I had crap in the paint, or I didn't clean the gun properly or something. But, I mean, they're alright, but they're just not really there, if you know what I mean. So I might pop the covers off and redo them. I'll let them go off a bit more. I'm going to do this with all of them, and the reason for that is because it will be essentially slippery. so it'll torque down nicely. And the other reason is these will go sort of internally into the engine, but when I go to do these front ones, they don't go into the engine, but still it'll provide some slip for them, so that at least then the shoulder of the bolt won't hang onto the paint and chip it, you know what I mean? It'll create a bit of a sort of a slippery cushion. So we'll just put these two in. And anti-seize probably isn't all that necessary, but I do it because we've got, as I said, two different metals, and I've seen a lot of fasteners out of the bikes I've pulled apart. There's only been a couple of them, but well, anything really that has different metals together, the chance of moisture in there can bring on oxidization and all sorts of things. So that's the reason I'm using it, to stop any galling and that sort of thing. I'm just going to sort of nip these up by hand, having a look to make sure I'm on 18 because I can't see. Perfect. That can all be tightened up later, I don't give a rat's about that. I just want to work out this front bit. So we'll take these tails off. There we go. Beautiful. And they use an 8mm. Maybe. I'll face them all one way. That way if Dave's fussy, he can say, that looks good. Okay, so I've got a clutch cover here, and there are 3 seals. These two are the same size, decompressor and clutch, and of course the Kickstarter one's here, that's a bigger seal. I'm going to put these in. Of course these can be pushed in just with finger pressure. But that's the difference when going through all that. You sort of have a nice case that's painted with new black seals and, you know, plated kit like this. I reckon it looks just 100% better. Is a rubber gasket in here, and we want to put a new one in. And he missed that, and a lot of people wouldn't know they're there. So we need to give that the flick, and we drop it over because we don't want the rod slapping around in there. I just want to make sure that they're lined up because I might have to use a rat tail file in there. These are bastards to get in these things. So preparing to put rings and so forth in. These are molly and cast. And of course your molly goes at the top, you cast on the second, and just make sure you know which way the rings are facing. Sometimes they have an R or a dot or whatever on top. And just checking ring end gap and land clearances and all sorts of stuff. You just have to make sure you check everything with these things. The clearancing on it looked absolutely superb. There was no issue with clearancing as far as I could see. It was worn, but the fact it wasn't a race bike I didn't think mattered, but it ended up biting us on the backside later. This is cleaning up with a bit of fresh white towel, making sure there's no grey residue from honing or anything in there. Best to wash it with soapy water and this sort of stuff, and then afterwards with thinner, and you'll get all that out. If you leave any of the grey residue in there, of course, that acts as a pumice sort of thing to prematurely wear everything out for you. The other thing is the chain tensioner. Because we didn't split the cases at this point, just wanted to make sure all the threads were clear and there was nothing in there that was going to cause issue with Loctite, which I ended up using on that chain tensioner. Gearing up to do a paint job on the bike. Just got a heat gun out there getting rid of the stickers. There were tiny bits of rust underneath the paint. This is the original paint that was on the bike, so just sort of starting to get it all ready to be bodyworked, so to speak. And of course we went on to use a chemical stripper, which is particularly unpleasant looking stuff but very effective. Great with stuff like this with a factory paint job because you can just give it literally one application, everything just comes off. It's when people add loads and loads of paint, and particularly things like spray putty is very hard to get off, but this was a walk in the park. It was very easy, quite a pleasurable job to do really. So here she is all cleaned up. Looks nice and straight, but you can see a dent there in the side. I think there were probably about 8 dents all told. Even so, very, very good in terms of condition for the age of the tank. And we got to it in the nick of time in terms of not too much rust and very easy to get rid of. The plastic wear, I should say, I used a flexible filler. Some of the really deep gouges and that sort of thing did look like they were going to be a problem, but it ended up being fine in the end anyway. And of course used a plastic primer over that. Now these things are full of complex curves. It doesn't look as hard here as it actually is when you go to do it. Get something wrong, you're going to see it a mile away. So I'm just trying to figure out how to get around some of these dents. I could get behind one or two of them, but not down the back there. The problem is when you get a dent, you get the surrounding metal sort of gives you a high. There's a bit of filling work there. I didn't cover the whole thing in filler. I just sort of filled bits and pieces of it, then blocked the whole thing right back to get it dead smooth. And it turned out well. I must say it did turn out well. There was nothing obvious in it once the paint was laid down. Stuff up. And I think I can already see one here. Hang on. Can I touch that yet? It's still very, very wet. I think that needs to be, where are we? There. I think that might need to be addressed. It just looks a bit high there. I can't feel it properly. But can you see that ridge? I'm looking at the white light at the edge of the tank. If we come across, there's a ridge there, right there. I need to rub that out. But aside from that, it's all looking pretty good. So it took one or two goes to get it the way I wanted it, but it's difficult seeing dents and this sort of stuff until you get it in one colour. Then there are a few things that do tend to stand out. And we just bang it in here, eh? Into this really obscure shape. I'm just going to get another spatula. Hang on a minute.
Like minutes per video or something?
Right.
Yeah, I think so.
The first coat just looks a bit like a guide coat, only very light. That might be, I might have to reduce that a bit more actually. So that's a bit of acrylic black. The only thing we're going to see of that is, of course, the stripe, and it's going to be cleared on top. So we can mask off and do the silver tomorrow. You can see there's overspray underneath it. So I might paint underneath it silver. And I'll give it another one in a minute. Beautiful. There, yes, very good. I've just wrecked my shirt, so wifey's going to friggin' kill me. Right, we've got our plastics done. That's the rear guard. You can see the Flexo does put a bit of sheen on it. So when we put our clear on, that'll be quite shiny. Taking measurements between each one to make sure they're accurate. So when I stick the other stripe in, the permanent one for masking, I only come down through here, because that's where it is on the original tank. Of course, the original tank is there. 20. That's 20. That's a bit loose. There is going to be a certain amount of error we can take up with the red stripe. This is the red stripe. It's going to eventually break the colour. But I'm paranoid about getting it right. So when we look at this, it should look right. Which it probably doesn't. But it's not my bike. Which one is it? Yeah, it's this one. I've got to think. And we're left with what should be the right stripe. And I think now is a great time to start shooting this colour. Now I need this colour to go off. Just a light coat for the first one. And we've got to watch that we don't we have to watch how we get that wet edge right, because otherwise you can end up with a stripe, sort of a fuzzy stripe of metallic particulate in the centre. So we can stick down a heavy coat next, and then afterwards we have to sort of dust it on to make sure that it's all really random. But you'll notice the silver covers the black beautifully. I've done my job. And the paint should be dry enough so it doesn't come off in your hand off the paper, if you know what I mean. So it's dry on the paper, but not, it's going to be tricky, but not too dry in that it grabs the tape and sort of, you know. That looks reasonably satisfactory, although I don't like how I've done that bottom line, but the seat covers that. This stuff's ridiculous. It looks purple, but when you hit it with a torch or light, it looks mental. Like it has every colour of the rainbow and it's gorgeous. This one's just your basic silver. So I think what we'll do is we'll load a gun and we'll just do a pass over some samples. Just trying to move it around. And you'll see some of that fleck in there. It's absolutely stunning. I'm really glad that he sort of chose this, because the silver didn't sit the way I thought it would. But I can see a couple of little specks in the paint. That's probably because I'm painting it in the garage. But it should dry the same as that, I hope. So let's just leave it be for a moment. That fleck looks sick in there. Well, just to get the rough off, get the high spots off. Small areas are the best thing to concentrate on, but I'm just paranoid about going through it. But it's looking really good. I'm very happy with it. So I guess the next thing is to give it a polish. We've got just a little bit of dullness in there, the reflection of the light. You can see the toolboard looks great. Can you read Zildjian on that symbol? I don't think you can. So it is looking good. So, I never know why they say credit card. I just prefer to use my bloody finger. Take that off now. It's a Honda. Take this off too. I always like to peel them off right back on itself. Otherwise, if you do it like that, it's going to lift it. I don't know if that's the right way or not, but it's the way I've always done these types of decals. But doesn't that look absolutely freaking nuts? Oh, I do like that. Honda. It's a Honda. There we go. It's a pity about that blemish just above the D. It's a pity I couldn't hide it, but I wanted it here. Good, that's not going to lift. That's down good. Excellent. So, what do you reckon? It's a Honda. Very tasty motorcycle. Right, so we have a bike and a tank here. We've still got to give it a slight polish. There's a few swirls in there, but I'm not too fussed about that at the moment. I'm going to try something on orthodox. I'm going to try it from the back, laying it up, and then I can spend more time sort of getting this how I want it. So we'll get the tape out and have a crack at that, eh? I'm just going to try and get right in the centre of it. And I want to look down the bottom of it as I do it. How does it look? Not too bad. It's just as you get to this spot here, this is where I had trouble getting the line right. I'm dead centre there, but we've got to kind of go around the curve. I don't even know if the camera can see what I'm doing. I'm tipping that's around about right there. And as I always say, I'm always friggin' wrong. I want that tight in that corner. I might use a bone in there just to push it in. But that should be round about kind of right. I'm happy with that. The bike looks fantastic. I'm just going to move the bars over a little bit so I can get around the other side. It would be a shame to drop it now, wouldn't it? Oh, I wouldn't be laughing. So I'm just going to walk the chain around until I get it there. Whoa, which is around about there. One more. It should be there, I reckon. So if I pop that cam gear back on there, I reckon it should be timed. So again, we shoot a torch in there, and that mark, don't know if you can see, is lined up. And those two marks there. So that's a bit more wiring. I might return to the tank now and the guards, or do a bit more work on those. I've got to speak slow and a bit more clearly. I think a lot of people have trouble with my voice. So I think it was just dusty, that's all. It's a bit of a shame because it was so nice before I started doing repairs in the garage. Knock that home. Pretty much just like that, because it's home. Some of them are nylocked, or at least they've got a thread locker on them, a steel thread locker. So I've got to see what I've got a full set of, which I'm sort of thinking are going to be these ones. Yes, they are. And of course they go on and we just tighten them up accordingly. So we'll do this, and we should end up with a beautiful looking piece. Honda are very clever people. They're the power of dreams. I've just got to move that indicator over. That indicator's not quite right where it is. The indicator's in the right spot, the arrow. The spring's good, the hub's good, everything's cool. Spare drivers to go in, and of course when the liners come next week, we're going to stick them in too, which is cool. And of course we've still got to find another bolt for that. But for now I can put the front hub away, or at least put it to the side and get the back on it and have a look at that. We're ready to go back on the bike, so that's good. Moving to the bike, of course, these have been polished now, these tappet covered things. They're not fully tightened yet, they're just sitting there for now because I need to get to the other side to see the timing marks to set the valve clearances up. I've also organised a new horn and rear brake light switch. These are rear linings, and this is the small hub rear one, and these come with springs as well. These are hard to get, and it's only one supplier I could find that had them. Of course, there's the new front ones there as well, so I've got the brakes, so that's all good. So we're getting into the fork rebuild now, just pulling them apart. These forks are in great condition really, just seals and cleaning out and polishing the legs and that sort of stuff. The stanchions were good, didn't have to get any of those. They just cleaned up with a bit of Scotch-Brite, and they came out very, very well indeed. So we're just going through, putting new seals in, cleaning out bits and pieces, and put the forks back together. I ended up using, I think it was 600 wet and dry, followed by a bit of 1000 grit. I used it wet on the legs of the forks, and just run them over a buff very, very quickly. I think each leg took something like 30 or 40 minutes or so, and they looked really, really good, almost new. Now, in terms of the few battle scars down here with some black polishing compound in, I'm going to take that out with a bit of Prepsol or thinner and a toothbrush. I'm not going to do it now because it's going to drip into that box full of 750 stuff, so it can happen later. Incidentally, I did cover in, you can just see an outline of where that casting mark was for that. Maybe it was an expansion thing, I don't know. I didn't like it, so I covered it. The other thing we've got to do, of course, is we've got to paint this guy. And that's just got a bit of etch on it, a bit of filler, and some etch primer, and that's the bezel for the taillight. And that was, of course, all rusty and looked terrible. And I've got an idea for that, because we've got all that lovely shimmering glitter on the side. Very nice. Right, we're going to start doing the exhaust now. Try and fit it up here. We've got to cut it and modify it and everything. Yeah, we're going to stick this heat shield on the exhaust. See how it goes. It's not long been painted, so it's probably wet. Stick these ones on. These springs seem stronger, these new ones. I'm just going to put these back just in case he needs to use them for... He's got all these other parts. There's enough to make another bike. I can't remember how to do it before. Hang on. You can pull it closer to the edge. Yep.
I'm fine with most of the way to the motor, so I can get under this easily.
You alright? Yep. Nothing on the crate. Beautiful. You hang on to it?
Yep.
Alright, so you got a back wheel on. And that's going to run well. That's cool.
Yep.
Cool. New brakes, new bearings.
Just put the brakes on.
Oh, look at that. Right, these wheels are the front wheel. Oh, that's going to save an awful lot of worry if we don't have
Yeah, well, I reckon that's what it runs on, Pete.
I think you are dead right, and you are. It's running well. Good. Thank God for that. I was worried.
Disappointed. Oh.
So now,
You can just lift it up and put it on its stand.
well, yeah, basically.
Lift that. You're right. There we go. Back on her wheels.
Yep. Jeez, it's a big set. It's good, doesn't it? Yeah. So I'm going to see that fits, and good news, it does. So I can chuck that in. Just let it sit there for now. That's a nice little fit, that's cool. And we can just do them up. I've used engine 8mm fasteners there because they look better. And I had some left over. They're a length that I didn't need for the engine, but they're lovely and discreet.
And choco?
Is that run in the middle?
Yep.
Let me just take the decompressor off. Sounds like it's hitting. I don't know. It's not the bloody. Listen up around the head. I don't think it's the piston hitting. I was hoping it'd be oil pressure, but that doesn't seem to have alleviated it. Not good. No. Did you like the way it ran though?
Yeah, it ran beautifully.
What I've done is I've made a 40 thousandths, if you like, copper shim. And here it is here, and I couldn't do it on a machine. Our flatbed, what do you call it, laser cutter at work will only do sheet stock, and it packed up, so they've got a new one. It's not been set up yet, so I have to do this all by hand, out of copper. And I wanted to do copper because if you do mild steel, it's going to rust on the edge and look terrible. So either side of that will be a thin gasket, and that's going to be more stable than just ganging gaskets on top of each other. So I think that's the way to go. At least I'm hoping it is, because every time you pull this out or pull it down, you're up for head gaskets and all that sort of stuff, and it's a pain. I don't want to have to do it again. So that's going to give it 40 thousandths clearance, which is going to lower the compression ratio. But I don't care as long as it lowers it to a point where it's not going to hit, because we can't do anything else. So the other thing I'm going to do is the balance shaft chain is very slack. I didn't split the cases on this one, but there's a little mod we can do on the spline for the adjuster on the balance chain where we can move it up a spline. And I'm going to do that to tighten that chain up. Tighter. That's cool. It's not a heap tighter, but it is a bit tighter. It's a heck of a lot tighter than that. So I think what we're going to do is put it like that. Here. These aren't going in that well. They're not going in, good boys and girls. Well, that is right there. Colour sanded that, which I didn't originally want to do, but the sort of glittery component, well, you can't see it there, but it does pop more with the polished guard. And of course we're going to take this off and do this, and that side cover, and here as well. Right, so after probably 6-7 months, we completely stripped the engine down and started all over again. I got the cases hydroblasted this time, which I hadn't done before, got rid of the paint that I'd done before, which I wasn't happy about, so it's all in raw aluminium. And Dave had a new crankshaft put in, new pin kit put in, balance shaft chains, you can see there, we're timing them, so the thing's as good as perfect. There was still a little bit of a noise after we started it. There's nothing hitting. I think it might be a decompressor adjustment. We just completely ran out of time at the end, because Dave had to go away for a few months to a cattle station. He was doing some work in the Northern Territory, but we ended up completely rebuilding it, new piston, had it rebored. The original problem was apparently piston slap. Now I looked at the bore and thought it was fine. It wasn't, as I said before, like new, but it wasn't a bike that was going to be raced. I thought it was fine just to bang around on, and the bore certainly looked alright. If you go back and look at the footage of the bore before, it looked fine. And I'd put a new piston in it as well, but there was a little bit too much clearance. Or at least that was picked by a Honda specialist that looked at all the parts, and I think he was scratching his head a bit too. But at the end of the day, it's all rebuilt now. When you figure it out. So, going to be all brand new. This has taken a day. Oh, it's taken an afternoon. So it's been rebored. Where did you bore it? A mill.
Yeah.
So that's all looking good. I thought it looked alright before, but there was a little bit of piston slab. We don't need to do that. So I'll just put the barrel on.
Felt like it had a bit of grit almost.
I'll just get a... Wait, I'll just get that. Oh yeah, it does a bit, doesn't it? It feels a little bit tight. Yeah, that's alright, that's good. That's excellent.
It is.
So I'll just feed that through. So I've got all the timing set up for the... I'm going to turn the camera around. I can't even see what I'm looking at in here. It's in there somewhere. Can you see that? Looks pretty good.
Very good.
Yeah, you got to kind of push that little flame.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
So I've got these back from the blaster, and they're dirty because I've been sort of reassembling all the mechanisms and so forth inside with dirty hands. But a bit of thinner and that'll all come off. Dave can ultimately decide to use thinner or solvent, maybe even a rag with some light machine oil or whatever. That'll keep them clean. And I just think it's better off being sort of bare aluminium than painted. Such technique. Why use that one? Use the Sikron one. Try that.
That one just wrecks your fingers. Oh, this is a dodgy one.
What, the ratchet or the bolt?
Oh, the ratchet's a ripper. Look at that.
Yeah, the other one's an Aldi one. Cool. Let's put that wire on there. Kickstarter's in the box here. We'll leave the airbox off for now until we start it.
Yeah.
And what about got the rear brake attached? Kickstarter. I guess start working with these headers. They're a prick, those things too.
What angle do we put this about there? Oh no. I reckon it's going to go through here because these before. This was through here before.
Yeah.
And so was,
yes, it was.
So was
the
this one.
bracket's here.
So was this one. I can't remember tucking that anywhere.
No, there's a bracket here that holds it.
Yeah, so we've got this wire here. It's got to come that way somehow. That one's there.
So, okay, so that's good.
So we've still got this one off the.
Hang on, this makes life a lot easier. Alright, so that goes in there. Hate bullet terminals.
Spark plug open tight.
Yep, that can come up. We're putting gear.
Plug just sticking it in.
Good. We're finally done. We can't show you the riding footage because we took it to a specialist motorcycle park to ride it around. and it looks absolutely brilliant. It's been a lot of work, but I learned a lot from it, and I'd do it again. Anyway, sorry it didn't sort of flow on. There was bits and pieces from all sorts of videos sort of crammed into this one. But whatever the case, hope you've enjoyed this. Take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon.